The I appreciate everyone being here today. I am a big believer in the chambers across the country. They provide a huge benefit to the local economy, and as we know, the U.S. economy is built on the shoulders of small and medium-sized enterprises. And what we are discussing today is after next. And I'll get into exactly what that term means. But it's about redefining the workforce development in a new and challenging business reality, obviously, which we've been discussing this throughout your presentation. It is sponsored by our new Innovation Center, which is located in downtown Denver, Colorado. And it is focused on incorporating innovation-based incubation and acceleration for small and medium-sized enterprises. Again, the backbone of the U.S. economy are the small and medium-sized enterprises, and those are the organizations that have been put at the largest risk during the last 12 to 14 months. So, and then presented by Norwich Pro, of which I am the director. We provide, it's 100% online professional certifications for working professionals and working adults who want to add to their portfolio of stackable certificates to show expertise in various areas like project management, data analytics, and business, etc. So again, thank you very much for being here. To kind of narrow the focus here, I have a few focus questions. The first question we want to ask, and this has been in the news here very recently, is why is Wall Street apparently doing so well while those of us on Main Street, both as individuals and as business people, why do we seem to be suffering? You might have seen all of the the press here just in the last 2 days about GameStop, and which is basically the brick and mortar company that's been around for a while. All of a sudden, it's blasted off the charts by small investors in the last several days. Nothing changed with their business model. It just became a battle between hedge fund managers and individual day traders. So it's a very interesting dynamic to see, but it's not putting any dollars in everyone's wallet, so to speak, who are living back here on Main Street. The next thing to think about as we go through this, well, what will your workforce look like? And that's whether you're an individual, an entrepreneur, sole proprietor of a business, or you have hundreds of employees. What is that workforce going to look like? And the key comparison I would ask you to consider is new normal versus after next. New normal was kind of the buzzword that we've all heard in the last 12 months. Well, this is the new normal. This is our new way of doing business. And I would argue that new normal has been a coping mechanism. It's our survival mode. It's how are we going to get through these hard times, let alone looking way down the road, so to speak. And what's going to emerge from this? It's been my recent experience that companies and individuals aren't really thinking about that so much. They're worried about today and tomorrow, putting food on the table, paying their employees, taking care of people, and staying in business, frankly. So it's well understood. And many companies and organizations have had to do that new normal. But what I want to try to share with you today is that now is the time, and I'll show you on multiple graphs, so to speak. The data shows that now is the time for everyone to be thinking about what are we going to be doing after next, because it will be here sooner than you think. So, what are the key skills that your workforce should have in this new business environment? As we've been in survival mode, a lot of companies have learned to do more with less. They've learned to utilize automation and machines because they don't catch COVID, right? to do things that were done by people prior to. So when the big reopening comes, and it will come, businesses aren't going to look the same, and people aren't going to have the same jobs. And while we have kind of been put on ice for the past 12 to 14 months, technology continues to march. And there have been radical developments and radical changes in artificial intelligence, automation, machine learning, making machines do things that humans used to do. And it's not so much a matter of being replaced by a machine, but our workforce has to learn how to integrate and work with machines, because they're not going away. The return on investment is just too great to pass by for business owners, and especially the big ones like Amazon and Google and Facebook, etc. So people are going to have to retool themselves and their businesses. Here's a big question for you to ask yourself and your company. Are you and your organization prepared to adapt, innovate, and in fact pivot? Pivot is in this case not looking at a slight deviation from the way that you used to do business, but it's taking your business in a whole new direction where it's not just adapting the new normal to become our new business, but maybe you have to consider, well, what is our core business? Maybe we've actually changed that. As many companies move to an online platform, they've developed new products and what they thought they were selling in the past has now turned into a new service. That's what we consider a pivot. So everyone needs to consider that piece. And then finally, what are some of the latest workforce initiatives that are being employed now to help businesses succeed? So setting the context, Wall Street versus Main Street, again, why does it seem that Wall Street is setting new records almost on a weekly basis, where those of us that live day to day on Main Street are not feeling the effects of that? Well, what I want to share with you is that there is not, just because Wall Street is being successful, it does not mean that the economy is being successful. It's only a single indicator, and it is pretty much divorced in terms of economic performance. And I'll show you that where even sentiment between those investors and those on Main Street almost have an inverse relationship. But this shows that, here we are with Standard & Poor's 500 at record levels after the pandemic started. What explains that? Well, this is a little graph that shows over the years trends in terms of what does Wall Street return in terms of percentage of investment based on the sentiment of both Wall Street and Main Street. And what you see that there's one that is very high there, that at the height, this is between January 1988 and until September of last year, the highest rate of return was 20.6% on average on Wall Street. And that was when the sentiment of Wall Street was more pessimistic, was below average. Yet Main Street was very bullish, so to speak, on their own, on the economy in general and on buyer sentiment and things like that. This only accounted for a 19% frequency, 19% of all the time between 88 and 2020. Did you see this sort of sentiment? What is going on right now? We are more in this at the 12% return rate right now. That's when the sentiment of Wall Street is more bullish, above average, but those of us, again, living on Main Street, our sentiment is less optimistic about the future. And that's what's going on right now. But a 12% return is not bad. And that occurs 21% of the time over history. The one with the highest frequency is when both Wall Street and Main Street sentiment is below average. So that's the very first one here at almost 12% right now. So again, the correlation between sentiment and success is almost inverse. You would think that, well, gosh, you'd think that it would be when Wall Street is very bullish and positive about the future that you'd have the biggest returns, but it's not necessarily so. Then you see Wall Street versus the world. This is in terms of world epidemics and global stock performance. And each of these data points that you see, the very first one here being HIV AIDS in the 1980s. And then you see a steady march. Again, this is an average of world indices. It kind of goes up and down, but it goes all the way to 2020. And you see where we are right now. And this is after Ebola and the measles outbreak of the prior year in 2019. It's only continued to go up. So you see this inverse relationship as well with what we would consider, we consider world level crises or disasters. It's like pandemics are good for business. Or not for business, let me take that back, but for investors. Then we look at Main Street. What's going on there? This is the unemployment rate, and it's divided by race in this particular instance. So it shows where we are at the highest point in May of 2020. We had the average that was about, I think it was almost 20%. But you see that our minority groups had the highest levels of unemployment by group. And that pattern has remained consistent. So again, it was almost 20% unemployment there. It has backed off since then, but these relationships between different groups within American society has remained pretty constant. Now, after the first stimulus event that happened back in the summer, U.S. workers experienced the highest level of cash savings that they've had in history. And that's what this chart on the right side reflects. So people were getting stimulus checks or unemployment checks. The lockdown had everybody sitting at home, so people weren't spending money. So that average of what you might hear in the past, where the average family has about $400 of liquid cash to be able to react to an emergency, that went way up. Now, since then, after that initial stimulus ended in September, you see how it dropped off quickly. But this is what they're expecting with a bounce back after this second round of stimulus checks hit. So again, now this is talking about U.S. unemployment again. So the unemployment rate went, again, we saw up to 20%, and it's dropped down since then. But this shows that, nearly 750,000 people took themselves out of the race, so to speak. They stopped looking for scarce jobs. They just dropped out. Now, again, this was back in September, but the trend line has continued. So they're not counted in the actual unemployment rate. Now, if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics websites, you can see for yourselves the actual, they can break that down of how many people actually left, what it would be like if it was adjusted. But in terms of what the nation publishes, they go with numbers that take people who have stopped looking for jobs out of the equation. I apologize for the seeing eye chart, but these are some of the economic indicators during the pandemic that have showed things like consumer spending up here in the left that just fell off the cliff. The national debt due to the relief packages that continues to grow, a bill that our children's children will be paying off. The U.S. money supply, again, that's been stashed away, so to speak. the consumer sentiment that fell off the cliff as well, which turned out to be good for Wall Street, right? And the Fed balance sheet, a number of US dollars, etc. So it has our indicators looking like an EKG readout, to tell you the truth. When you overlay all of these, the easiest way to describe it is it just looks like a mess. But it's very predictable. Now, this is called the pandemic economy model, okay? And this shows various countries across the world that go through the 5 phases of a pandemic economy. Again, COVID is not the first one. There's been many. And so they have dropped this into 5 different phases: the early warning, the emergency response, the trough, which is usually the big dip, then the recovery that starts as you start to see your initiatives and preventive measures taking hold, and then finally when the vaccine takes hold and your population is protected. Well, what I've highlighted in red here is where the United States is here. This indicates second wave. I think that most medical experts would now consider that we're in a third wave, and we have slipped way down the hill here to be in the trough with a lot of other countries that haven't been able to pull themselves out. However, what we do see is that those countries that are maybe more centralized, where authority is more centralized, or they're able to shut down and force their populations to conform much better. So you see China leading the way, South Korea, Vietnam, Australia. They're a large island, so it's easy to quarantine that thing off, Thailand, etc. So we are here right now. We still have a ways to go. We have to climb out of phase 3 and at least get into the recovery phase here. So again, very predictive and very predictable, unfortunately. So while everyone talks about being weary of COVID and the lockdown and such, we need to understand that this is just like gravity. It exists whether we want to believe in it or not. And we do have to pass through these phases to get to the other side. Well, what does that mean in terms of business impact? So where are businesses closing at the highest rates? And you see, by U.S. metro area here and by U.S. state, probably not surprising, but you see like Hawaii being number 1, states like Nevada and California, cities like San Francisco, San Jose. Look at all of the U.S. metro areas in California and the impact that they had. The red indicates that these are permanently closed. They're closed forever. The light blue means that they're temporarily closed, but a lot of those temporary closures are on the precipice of falling into the permanent closures. And that's why it's so important to be able to get those stimulus, get the economies moving for the small and medium-sized enterprises that, again, provide the tax base for our metro areas and for the federal government, in fact. It's not so much the giant companies. They find ways of minimizing their tax burden. But it's everyone that is in the audience here today that is bearing the brunt of that. This is how permanent closures now outnumber the temporary ones. So this was as of, they started tracking this as of March, and this trend line just continues. As you see, it's been a steady trend line, almost on a 45-degree axis here. Top being temporary, that continue to reduce, and the bottom being permanent, that continue to climb. What sectors are getting crunched? Restaurants, obviously anything that deals with being out and being in social environment, so to speak. The restaurant industry has taken a crush. 60% of privately owned restaurants permanently closed. Shopping and retail, the brick and mortar shopping and retail stores we already saw were in a decline. Now we see 48% permanently closed. Beauty and spas, bars and nightlife and fitness. Again, all places where citizens congregate and socialize. Now, this is, what does the economic recovery look like? Again, very predictable, unfortunately. But you as an entrepreneur, a business owner, a banker, whomever, whatever your lot in life, a farmer, it's very, very important to understand that, again, like gravity, this is almost like a law of recovery. So this is a compendium of 3 different models that were forecasted basically back in October, November timeframe. But you see, so tracking from Q4 of 2019, when the coronavirus was first identified, the economy fell off the table. And here we are, after Q2 of the fiscal year, going into the 3rd quarter, and what we see is the trajectory of climbing out of that trough on the economy side. But look at what the dates are, and again, predictable. Q4 of 2021 is when we're talking about being back, almost back, to the same level of where we were when the economy was humming along at record levels back in the 4th quarter of 2019. So it's you're talking about a 2-year recovery, and we are just past halfway there if everything holds and we stay on trajectory. So again, as a business owner, you need to know this. Survival strategy will only take you so far, right? Then you have to figure out something new. And business owners are making these tough decisions every day. Do we stay and play, or do we close and wait for another day? But you have to sort of understand, the long view is the winning view on this, and figuring out how you're going to be able to hang in there, but especially what are you going to do when we hit here in Q4 of 2021? What are you going to be doing? So how do we prepare ourselves, our companies, and our workforce to weather this storm, and to not just survive, but to be in a position to take advantage of what happens next after this? And that's where I get to the theme of this annual conference, which is after next. Well, that is that another buzzword? No, it's not. The new normal turned into a buzzword, but not too many people are talking about after next right now. Again, new normal was just a temporary adjustment to the way we used to do business in order to survive the COVID-induced economy. It will not survive the long haul. Again, you can look at businesses in your own hometown there, and the way people have gone to maybe it's retail down on Main Street, with shopping online and then delivery at curbside. We see it with the big boxes, like Best Buys and Walmart and things like that. You see it in the drive-through restaurant businesses, like we have Chick-fil-A. Dramatically changed the way they did their delivery of food to where everything is done outside and drive up and touchless. Versus, say, in some McDonald's, they're still trying to figure out their business model to where it's most convenient for their customers. So a lot of this is still getting shaken out, but again, it's most people and most businesses are still in the new normal, let's just survive mentality. After next will transform both your business model and your processes, and perhaps, again, even your core business. As a business owner shifts their products to an online environment, then they discover new types of services and new types of products to even put online. Look how we're doing business today. We're in this avatar-driven virtual world. Well, you know, the first thought to me as someone who's in the education space right now is, boy, wouldn't it be great if our kids were going to school in an avatar-driven classroom like this? Or I was able to hold, Norwich Pro college courses in an environment like this. It's a lot better than, I'll date myself here, but looking at the Brady Bunch blocks on a screen, right? And that, still feeling very isolated because you're in a box. So the things to consider in your organization for after next thinking is first your strategy. If you don't have a plan, then any plan will get you there, right? Innovation. What do we have to do? How do we have to think new? Your flexibility and your pivotability. So how flexible are we, like bamboo in the wind, so to speak? And are we capable of pivoting if that's what the market demands of us? Your leadership. Is your leadership flexible as well? Are they willing to listen to new innovative ideas, or are you stuck in the past? Integrating technology. It's here. It doubles every 18 months, so to speak. And automation and AI are going to be part of our business models all the way down to Main Street. And then especially the things that you can affect right now is training and education of your workforce. So after next, how does it all fit together? Where would you even start on this? Again, this is just a simple visual to kind of show how it fits together and where do you start. The first thing is always you got to look at the market. So it should be driven by your business intelligence. Not what you want to do, but what does the market want? What does the market need? And then we have to adjust to what the market is demanding now. So first, you collect your business intelligence. Then next, you look at your high-level strategy and you go, okay, based off of our analysis, where do we need to go in broad strokes, so to speak? This is your vision. Where do we want to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And that's where you might have to consider the strategic pivot. Hey, we need to go in a whole new direction, or our ship is going to be sunk. It's like, at the turn of the 20th century, there were 300 buggy whip manufacturers in the United States because everybody was still in a horse and carriage. By 1913, they were all gone. So that wasn't a very long time. We don't want to be in the buggy whip manufacturing business. So you figure out the high-level strategy goals. Then you map that out in terms of, okay, based on our strategy, where do we need to look in terms of our capacity as an organization, our internal processes, our customers, and then our financial situation. Do we have good credit? Are we carrying a huge debt? Are we debt free? And you build your strategy maps based off of the mission of your organization. But then if you stop there, you don't know how well you're doing, right? So you have to develop those targets and measures. How are we going to measure whether or not we're hitting those targets, right? And those turn into our key performance indicators, or KPIs. And then you put that all together in strategic initiatives, which link your high-level strategy down to actual actions, again, that you're going to measure to bring about results. But I would ask you, where do most people, most business owners, especially small business owners, where do they focus? I would argue that most people stay down here on the little rat wheel, right? Running and running and running every day, just trying to get more results. But these gears don't turn in reverse, right? It starts way up here with the market, and you have to be thinking ahead. And then you have to align your strategies. So you figured out your organizational strategy, you stay on target. Then you have to figure out, well, how does our BD, our business development strategy, support that? Then comes the marketing, all right? Where are we going to advertise? How are we going to reach people? We need to incorporate social media marketing. Again, that might be a pivot for a lot of organizations, but it's very, very effective. And if you're not in social media for advertising, I would argue that you're going to be in the buggy whip business pretty soon. And then making sure that you understand the difference between awareness marketing and that marketing that will actually generate business or leads. And then your sales and revenue strategies and how you're actually tracking that. So they all need to support. If any one of these are out of whack, so to speak, you're not going to get the results that you want, and you'll end up on the mouse wheel again. Where are we right now? I would argue that 2020 was that focus on survival mode. Down here in the red, we're in the red zone, and that's where the weak ones kind of fell out of the market. Except for we'll tell you about one aberration, which is called a zombie company. You might have heard about that, and that is a company that survives basically because it's still getting it's living off of loans, carrying more debt than it's producing in terms of cash flow and revenue, but it's still alive because it's being artificially propped up. In normal times in the US economy, about 5% of the companies are considered zombie companies. During COVID, during the last year, that number has ballooned to 20%. So think about that. 20% of the businesses in the US are considered zombies. They owe more than they're actually making. So survival mode. The market will filter those out eventually, but then it's time for that strategic pivot. So again, if you don't have any plan at all, you can borrow mine here. 2021 should be the year that you rebuild your brand and your reputation and identify that new strategic direction. 2022, transform that new business process and support it with all of your strategies. And then 2023, if you want to continue to expand, you seek those strategic partnering opportunities to reach a bigger piece of the market. And then further on down the line, and these are in pencil, so to speak, but you can look at seeking small scale acquisitions and then larger scale further on down the line. Acquisitions and mergers is a growth strategy, but it's, if you just want to stay where you're at, then you can cut this off pretty much anywhere you want to, but you need to at least look 3 years out and think about this much, focusing on organic growth. So folks, that's where we are, I think, in a nutshell, and my recommendation for how to get past this survival mentality, so to speak, and be prepared to grow and flourish in the new business economy that is definitely coming our way.